You don't wake up one day and suddenly feel like a different person because a number changed on a screen. There's no fireworks, no music, no voice announcing that you've crossed a finish line. And yet, when you hit $1 million invested, something inside you quietly shifts. Not in the way movies show it, not in the loud, arrogant, champagne-popping way. It changes in a far more subtle, unsettling, deeply psychological way. It changes how you breathe when bills arrive. It changes how your shoulders feel when you walk into a room. It changes the conversations you have with yourself late at night, when no one else is watching. If you're someone who cares too much, you already know that money has never just been money to you. It's been safety. It's been responsibility. It's been proof that you're doing enough, that you're not failing the people you love, that you're not falling behind in a world that never slows down. You didn't chase $1 million to feel superior. You chased it because you were tired of the quiet fear, the background noise, that constant mental calculation running in your head, even on your best days. And that's why hitting this number doesn't feel like victory at first. It feels strange. Psychologically, something profound happens here. Before this point, every dollar felt fragile. Behavioral science calls this scarcity framing. Your brain treated money like oxygen in a thin room. Every expense was a threat. Every market drop felt personal. You cared deeply because you had to. Caring was survival. But once you reach $1 million invested, your brain slowly begins to rewire. Not because you're rich, but because the math starts working without your constant supervision. Compounding, which once felt abstract and distant, becomes tangible. You begin to realize that time is now doing more of the work than your effort. And this is where the emotional shift begins. You notice that the market moving doesn't spike your heart rate the way it used to. A red day no longer feels like a moral failure. A green day doesn't feel like proof of worth. Neuroscience shows that when perceived safety increases, the amygdala of the brain's fear center reduces its grip. You're not fearless, you're calmer. And for someone who has spent their entire life caring too much, calm can feel unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable. There's a quiet grief that can surface here too. No one talks about it. You realize how much of your identity was built around striving, around fixing, around worrying, around being the responsible one. When the urgency fades, you're left asking, if I'm not constantly anxious about money, who am I now? This is the gentle darkness of financial success, the part where freedom arrives without instructions. You may even feel guilt for feeling okay while others are still drowning in the same stress you escaped. Socially, things change in ways you can't fully explain. You become more selective with your energy, not because you think you're better than anyone, but because your nervous system has learned what peace feels like, and it doesn't want to unlearn it. You stop chasing conversations that revolve around panic and comparison. You start noticing how many people are performing wealth while secretly terrified. And because you care too much, you feel that tension deeply. You want to help, but you also realize you can't save everyone without losing yourself again at this level. Money stops being the main character and becomes the background. This is the psychological milestone most people misunderstand. $1 million invested doesn't mean luxury. It means option. It means you can say no without your stomach dropping. It means mistakes no longer threaten your entire future. The stress response loop that once dominated your thoughts begins to loosen. And in that space, something unexpected emerges: clarity. You start asking better questions. Not how do I make more, but why am I making it? Not what if I lose everything, but what actually matters if I don't. There is, however, an unhealthy side if you're not careful. People who care too much can turn this milestone into a new prison. The fear doesn't disappear, it just evolves. You might start obsessing over preserving instead of growing, over-protecting instead of living, over-optimization instead of joy. Psychology calls this loss fixation. The higher you climb, the more afraid you become of falling, and if unchecked, it can shrink your world just as much as scarcity once did. But there is a healthier path, and it begins with understanding what this number truly represents. $1 million invested is not a finish line, it's a psychological permission slip. Permission to stop proving, permission to slow down your nervous system, permission to decouple your self-worth from your net worth. The people who thrive after this milestone are not the ones who squeeze every extra basis point. They're the ones who learn to trust themselves again, who allow life to be more than preparation for disaster. What's most surprising is how your relationship with time changes. Before, time felt like an enemy. You were racing against inflation, aging, missed opportunities. After time becomes an ally, you feel patience in your body. Decisions stretch out. You're no longer reacting, you're responding. And for someone who has lived in constant anticipation of what could go wrong, this feels like finally exhaling after holding your breath for years. The deepest change, though, happens internally. You realize that the version of you who cared too much was never weak. They were protective. They were doing the best they could with the information and resources they had. And now, standing on the other side of that effort, you don't need to abandon that part of yourself. You need to thank it. Caring built this foundation. But now, care can soften. It can evolve from anxiety into intention, from fear into presence. Hitting $1 million invested doesn't make life perfect. It doesn't erase uncertainty or guarantee happiness. What it does is remove the constant hum of survival from your mind, and in that silence, you finally hear yourself, your real values, your real desires, your real limits. That's why everything changes, not because you have more money, but because you finally have space. So here's the question I want to leave you with quietly, honestly, without pressure. If the fear that's been driving you all these years slowly fades, what kind of life would you choose to build next? And would you allow yourself to live it, not someday, but now?